First, let me be clear, I am not here to win an argument about time, nor do I have time to convince anyone that extraterrestrials are real. I'm here to deliver a message because time is running out. I'm not trying to convert you, I am trying to open your eyes. One thing is certain, race doesn't determine who is right. This is not a black thing or a white thing, it's a gray thing. By grays I mean the extraterrestrial beings so often described in UFO lore. I believe those grays are controlled by reptilian intelligences and that they've come to this planet and taken control, right under your nose. The people in positions of power know this, but they are not telling you. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. So, to the question, is God an extraterrestrial? A good place to start is what comes to mind when you hear the name God. Most religions describe God as a supreme being who dwells in the heavens, ruling from a throne, surrounded by angelic hosts. See Psalm 45:6, Matthew 5:3, Quran 2:255. Many imagine an infallible ruler who can will things into existence or destroy them with a gesture. Genesis 1:1, Mark 13:19, Quran 2:117. That image resembles a super-action figure more than an abstract creator. Across religious traditions the name differs, Theos to Christians, Yahweh to Jews, Allah to Muslims, but the attributes are strikingly similar. In modern times I argue that what people call God is better understood as extraterrestrial intelligence. I've said this for years, now articles and disclosures are appearing more frequently, so more people are starting to consider the possibility. If you study scripture closely, not only in translation, for example, King James Bible, Yusuf Ali Quran, but in the original languages, Hebrew, Greek, Arabic, certain descriptions line up with an extraterrestrial interpretation. Words translated as heaven or the heavens, Hebrew Shemayim, Greek Ornos, Arabic Sama/Samawat, can mean skies or a place above. Some ancient terms and passages may point to particular constellations or celestial regions. The text suggests Orion in a few places. The scriptures give many scenes that read like encounters with physical beings who travel, speak, eat, and display emotions. Consider these biblical examples. God appears to prophets like Noah and Abraham, predicts births, Genesis 17:19, sits and drinks, Genesis 18, eats cooked meat, Genesis 18:8, speaks aloud, Deuteronomy 5:29, and even expresses regret, Genesis 6:5-6. God negotiates with Abraham, Genesis 18:23-28, and changes plans based on human appeals. God commands wars, parts the sea for Israel, and drowns other peoples, Exodus narrative. These are not the attributes of an impassive, eternal, unknowable supreme, they read like interactions with beings who have human-like senses and intentions. That raises a problem. The God of these texts often behaves in ways that seem emotionally inconsistent, vindictive, or parochial, not what many expect of an all-wise, all-loving creator. As people gain access to more knowledge, portable computers, online texts, multilingual resources, they are less likely to accept religious rhetoric uncritically. They can check sources and question inherited interpretations. If extraterrestrials exist and have been interacting with humanity, where does that leave conventional religious promises of paradise and protection? What would happen if a comet or meteor were to strike Earth and wipe out life as we know it? Where would the Almighty be then? These kinds of questions deserve answers from our religious leaders. There are modern reports and scientific events that raise questions about divine involvement or protection. Solar storms, coronal mass ejections, and near-Earth asteroid threats have been documented in mainstream outlets, and space agencies take those threats seriously. If an all-loving God really controls everything, why would humanity be vulnerable to such cosmic dangers without explicit scriptural warning? Historical and scriptural examples often read as encounters with technological craft and intelligences. Stories of chariots of fire, Elijah's ascent in 2 Kings 2:11-12, Ezekiel's vision of wheels within wheels, the cloud by day and fire by night that guided Israel, Exodus, and other passages can be interpreted as descriptions of spacecraft and extraterrestrial agency. Some religious movements, and alternative scriptures or sex-specific texts, interpret these episodes explicitly as visits by vehicles or beings from the skies. Different faith communities respond differently. Some deny any extraterrestrial interpretation, while others, including certain Mormon teachings and minority groups, are more open to the idea that gods or heavenly beings have extraterrestrial origins. Media coverage and institutional control over narratives influence what the public is told. When mainstream outlets don't report something, it's easy for people to dismiss it, even though alternative sources and witnesses claim otherwise. I've been saying these things for years. People once called me crazy. Now that more publications and disclosures are emerging, listeners are starting to reconsider. If you remain skeptical, ask your religious leaders to explain the scriptures in light of these phenomena. What happens to the promises of heaven and salvation if catastrophic cosmic events occur? How do they interpret the many strange, physical descriptions of the divine in scripture? Finally, know that I come to you with what I call right knowledge, right wisdom, and a right overstanding, knowledge meant to break what I describe as a hypnotic spell of ignorance. Whether you accept it or not, the questions are real. Look again at the world around you and at your sacred texts, the descriptions are there. Decide for yourself which path to follow. Many people ask, why would God be considered an extraterrestrial instead of simply being called God when he comes to Earth? The answer lies in the words themselves. Extraterrestrial is formed from extra meaning beyond, and terrestrial meaning of the Earth. Anything that originates beyond this planet, a meteor, a comet, or a being, falls under that definition. The root astral comes from the Greek and Latin for star, so to call something extraterrestrial is to call it from the stars. When people describe God as dwelling in the heavens, they are pointing upward, to the sky, to the stars, to outer space. And if God is not of this earth but comes down to it, then by definition he could be described as an extraterrestrial. Terrestrial means earthly, celestial means heavenly. One is of earth, the other is above earth. The question, then, is whether celestial and extraterrestrial are two ways of speaking about the same reality. Scripture itself gives us scenes that reinforce this reading. In Genesis 1:2, the Spirit of God hovers over the waters, an image not of an abstract force but of a presence moving above the surface of the earth. Elsewhere God eats with Abraham, Genesis 18, argues with him over the fate of Sodom, regrets his own decisions, Genesis 6:6, and descends onto Mount Sinai in fire and smoke, Exodus 19. These are not the acts of a distant, untouchable force but of a being who travels, speaks, sees, feels, and acts, like a visitor. Across cultures, similar accounts appear. The Dogon people speak of visitors from Sirius. The Hopi remember the Kachinas. Ancient Mesopotamian texts describe gods descending from the heavens. In each case the question returns, if these beings came down from the skies, interacted with humans, taught laws, demanded worship, why not consider them extraterrestrials? Religions resist this framing because it changes everything. If God is extraterrestrial, then Scripture may be the record of contact with intelligences from beyond Earth. It would mean salvation, judgment, and even creation itself have to be reconsidered in light of cosmic politics and technology. That is why the simple question, why call God extraterrestrial instead of just God, matters so much. It forces us to confront the possibility that what has long been described as divine may, in fact, be from the stars. In 1947, pilot Kenneth Arnold was flying near Mount Rainier, Washington, when he spotted 9 mysterious objects moving in formation. He described them as darting through the sky like saucers skipping across water. That description gave birth to the phrase flying saucer, and eventually to the modern term UFO, unidentified flying object. But what happens when such a craft is no longer unidentified? Once its design, propulsion, or origin becomes known, it ceases to be a UFO and instead becomes an EFO, an identified flying object. This raises another question: how exactly do these crafts fly? Witnesses have long reported that extraterrestrial vehicles move in ways no earthly aircraft can, soaring smoothly, skipping erratically, or drifting as though falling like leaves. Some sway back and forth in what is called the pendulum effect, while others wobble on their axis before suddenly shooting off at impossible speeds. The key lies in magnetism. Extraterrestrials understand and harness magnetic and gravitational forces in ways we do not. Our planet itself provides the field they use. Tilted at a 23 degrees axis, Earth contains regions where compasses spin uselessly, such as the Bermuda Triangle and the Devil's Triangle. These anomalies are not mysteries to extraterrestrials but opportunities. Their crafts are designed to draw upon such forces, bending gravity and magnetism into advanced propulsion systems. Unlike terrestrial jets, which rely on combustion and aerodynamics, these vehicles are free of such limits. They have been seen making 45 degrees and even 90 degrees turns at speeds nearing 18,000 miles per hour, maneuvers that should tear apart any human-built machine. To explain this, one must consider the 4 fundamental forces of physics: gravity, electromagnetism, the strong nuclear force, and the weak nuclear force. Extraterrestrial technology manipulates these forces, particularly gravity and magnetism, to travel not only across the heavens but within our atmosphere. Accounts of such sightings are not confined to fringe stories. Reports appear in newspapers and broadcasts worldwide. In Brazil, residents of Santa Catarina and Bahia recorded saucer-shaped objects escorted by smaller glowing craft. In London, the People newspaper admitted that UFOs were once dismissed as fantasy but were now being logged daily. Near Heathrow Airport, witnesses watched a strange rat-shaped object hover silently near incoming flights, soon pursued by military helicopters. Spain's Almanac Mundial recalled mysterious airships reported as early as the 19th century, some described as glowing cigars, others as saucers. Costa Rican television once captured dozens of luminous discs on live broadcast, seen in broad daylight by hundreds of witnesses. Even governments and militaries have been drawn into the mystery. A multinational study predicted not only continued sightings and abductions but the possibility of global extraterrestrial activity, even invasion. Meanwhile, in the United States, rumors and leaks point to a hidden center of study, Area 51. Known also as Groom Lake, S4, Dreamland, and Watertown, the base is protected by mountains and secrecy. It is said to house captured alien crafts, with scientists attempting to reverse engineer the propulsion systems that allow them to bend gravity and magnetism to their will. Officially, it is marked only as a test site, but to many, it is the heart of UFO research. Some wonder whether anyone has ever worked directly on extraterrestrial crafts. The answer is yes. One of the most famous figures to claim this is Robert Bob Lazar, a scientist and businessman who has been described by others as both a physicist and electronic engineer. In 1988 he was recruited by the Department of Naval Intelligence to work on advanced propulsion systems. His hiring was facilitated by Edward Teller, the father of the Star Wars program, and Lazar was assigned to Project Galileo, a secret effort devoted to studying 9 distinct types of disc-shaped extraterrestrial craft. Lazar worked on one particular craft that struck him as utterly alien in its design. Inside, the seats were built for beings no taller than small children. Reports he read indicated that these discs had come from the fourth planet of the binary star system Zeta Reticuli 2. The exterior of the craft measured about 15 feet tall and 52 feet in diameter, its brushed metallic surface resembling stainless steel or aluminum, but with no seams, welds, rivets, or bolts. It appeared as if it had been molded in a single piece, a technology far beyond Earth's capabilities. At the heart of the craft was an antimatter reactor that sat on top of a hemisphere the size of a basketball. This reactor generated its own gravitational field and powered the saucer by means of gravity amplifiers. Lazar explained that the system manipulated gravity waves much as we use microwaves on Earth. The fuel for this reactor was something he called Element 115, an exotic, super heavy element not found naturally on Earth. In its stable state, this element was not radioactive. The crafts operated in 2 distinct modes. In Omnitron mode, a single gravity amplifier allowed the craft to hover and make simple lateral movements. In Delta mode, all 3 amplifiers engaged simultaneously and locked onto a target destination, enabling the craft to break free from Earth's atmosphere and traverse space. In this mode, the saucers could generate their own gravitational field, effectively bending space and time around them. Compared to such mastery of physics, human science seemed primitive. Lazar even noted that other civilizations might have created not just 115 elements, but hundreds more, some entirely artificial. While working at Groom Lake, Lazar was kept under strict surveillance. In late 1989, using the pseudonym Dennis, the name of his supervisor, he revealed his experiences to journalist George Knapp on Las Vegas television, appearing in silhouette. He disclosed that the US government was in possession of extraterrestrial ships and was attempting to reverse engineer them. Because Lazar knew the schedule of test flights, he brought friends into the Nevada desert to observe glowing discs from a distance. Eventually, security caught them. Lazar was debriefed, threatened, and soon discovered that his personal records, birth certificates, employment files, academic transcripts, had disappeared. After surviving an apparent attempt on his life, he went public, believing that exposure was his only protection. Reports of his testimony spread. The National Examiner, April 10, 1990, ran a story titled "U.S. Pilots Are Flying Captured UFOs in Nevada." It described how scientists, including Lazar, were transported daily by windowless buses into the hidden compound near Groom Lake. Enormous camouflaged hangars concealed captured saucers. Lazar recalled the first time he saw one power up, the bottom of the globe glowed and hissed like high voltage does on a round metal sphere. Then it slowly lifted off the ground. There was no noise, no exhaust, no propeller. Even the hissing stopped at about 20 feet. Lazar's revelations were reinforced by accounts from other insiders. In interviews published in Evidencia OVNI, military pilots admitted seeing technology at Area 51 that dwarfed even the most advanced human designs. One compared it to setting Leonardo da Vinci's parachute beside the space shuttle. Despite official denials that Lazar ever worked at Nellis Air Force Base, his name was later discovered in an old base directory. He even provided details about alien autopsies said to have been conducted on site. These reports fit into a wider pattern. In Puerto Rico, sightings of enormous triangular craft multiplied throughout the 1980s and 1990s. Witnesses described silent, metallic structures with arrays of colored lights. On some occasions, beams of white or red light were projected downward or upward from the craft. Entire towns reported being stunned by the sudden appearance of gigantic V-shaped or boomerang-shaped ships that vanished at impossible speeds. Military encounters were also documented. In April 1969, a National Air Guard pilot in Puerto Rico pursued a mile-long arrowhead-shaped object at 60,000 feet. His gun camera film was seized, and he was ordered to silence. In Belgium during the early 1990s, over 1,000 cases involving black triangular craft were logged, corroborated by military radar and ground witnesses. In 1988, residents of Cabo Rojo, Puerto Rico, watched as two Navy F-14 Tomcats attempted to intercept a colossal triangular UFO. One fighter reportedly collided with the object and disappeared. The other also vanished moments later, while the UFO split into 3 smaller triangles and flew off. Witnesses were later visited by men claiming to be from the U.S. Air Force, who assured them that what they saw was real. Elsewhere, triangular craft continued to be reported in Connecticut, New York, and across Europe. In Spain, a young man named Fernando Martinez claimed he was abducted by a hovering triangle in 1986. In each case, the descriptions were consistent: massive, silent, geometrically precise vehicles, often accompanied by missing time or strange lights. At the same time, Puerto Rico became a focal point for another reason. It was home to the world's largest stationary radio telescope, the 1,000-foot dish at Arecibo. Its ability to scan the skies and transmit signals into space has long been suspected as a beacon attracting extraterrestrial attention. Many believe that the telescope's presence, along with other secret experiments in communication, explains why the island became a hotspot for sightings. Together, these accounts suggest a pattern: captured craft in Nevada, eyewitness reports in Puerto Rico, Europe, and beyond, and scientists like Bob Lazar stepping forward to say that not only do these ships exist, but we are already attempting to duplicate their technology. Many people are unaware that Camp Santiago, the Army Reserve base in Salinas, Puerto Rico, may play a role in the storage and testing of flying saucer-type crafts that the United States government is preserving. Some who do know have begun to talk. The truth is that Puerto Rico has its own Area 51, hidden beneath the ground behind the mountains in an isolated section at the back of Camp Santiago. Impossible? No, it is not only possible, it is a fact. Too many people, both civilians and military personnel, have witnessed strange events in this area to dismiss it. In the northeast section of the base, between several mountains, multiple witnesses have reported seeing the ground open up with a sudden burst of light. From within, luminous objects rise, UFOs emerging from the earth itself. Once the crafts depart, the gap in the mountain closes seamlessly, leaving no sign of disturbance. Witnesses describe the light in different ways. Some compare it to a raging fire, others to a brilliant red-orange glow. At times, platformed military trucks with cargo hidden under dark canvases have been observed entering this restricted zone. Such reports echo the testimonies of witnesses from as far back as 1979. That summer, José Luis Rodriguez, later quoted in Evidencia OVNI magazine, issue number 8, pages 30-31, was visiting the area with his cousin, now an officer at Roosevelt Roads Naval Station. Rodriguez described how the earth itself seemed to rise before them. One section of the ground lifted, taking with it earth, rocks, weeds, and shrubs. At first we thought it was natural, but then we realized these were platforms camouflaged to look like untouched land. They rose on powerful hydraulic supports, revealing rectangular gaps beneath, each about 50 feet wide. From within, we heard a deep booming sound, and then we saw them. Flying saucers, 2 of them, hovering silently in the air about 10 stories above the ground. They were beautiful, metallic silver, about 60 feet in diameter. Each had a large band of windows around the center. The top and bottom were flattened, and on the underside we could see engraved markings, letters that looked like URSS or possibly UPSS. To me, it looked like URSS. From the windows, an intense white light poured out, even though it was broad daylight. We stood frozen in awe for nearly 2 minutes. The encounter ended abruptly when the men noticed a vehicle racing toward them from the direction of a white building used for communications on the base. Believing they had been spotted by security forces, they fled. Rodriguez later remarked that though they had not seen anyone inside the ships, he felt sure someone had seen them. This 1979 incident at Camp Santiago occurred 16 years before Bob Lazar claimed to have witnessed flying saucers hidden in camouflaged hangars at Area 51's S4 site in Nevada. Both accounts describe the use of underground facilities, concealed entrances, and advanced craft hidden from the public. The suggestion arises naturally: does the United States government already possess flying saucers? The answer is yes. They have recovered crashed alien crafts, studied their systems, and now operate them. In December 1996, for example, television broadcasts showed a disc-shaped drone craft 6 feet in diameter, unmanned and robotically controlled, the product of years of secret development. The government has a plan, and part of that plan involves controlling public perception. UFOs, they say, are nothing more than religious fantasies, echoes of Christian beliefs in the rapture, Matthew 24:40-41, 1 Thessalonians 4:17, or Islamic teachings about the Day of Standing, Quran 75:1. Others dismiss them as delusions or jokes. But the truth, as insiders admit, is that UFOs are real, and governments are actively flying them. The secrecy extends worldwide. Declassified Soviet files tell of an incident in Siberia in October 1987, when Russian soldiers reportedly shot down a low-flying saucer with surface-to-air missiles. From the wreckage emerged 5 small humanoids with large heads and black eyes. The beings briefly huddled together before merging into a single glowing orb. The orb expanded and released a blinding burst of energy that left 23 soldiers instantly petrified into stone. Only 2 survived unharmed. The wreckage and the stone soldiers were taken to a facility near Moscow, where they were studied in secret. According to CIA sources, this chilling file offered one of the clearest examples of alien power and their willingness to defend themselves when threatened. Closer to home, witnesses at Camp Santiago recall how, after UFOs rose from the hidden mountain hangars, U.S. officials arrived by helicopter the very next day. They gathered those who had seen the event and ordered silence. What the people saw was real, the officials admitted, but they were instructed never to speak of it again. So the question remains, does the global elite know that God is an extraterrestrial? The answer given by insiders is yes. They know these beings exist. They know religion has been fabricated to conceal this truth. And they know the public must remain blind to UFO reality. Later, Mac Brazel admitted that he had not personally witnessed the crash or the disc itself. Instead, he had reported what others told him. Yet on that very same day, Brazel and Major Jesse Marcel were flown 3 miles from another impact site, where they were shown disc-shaped debris and the remains of an alien crew. This event did not occur at Roswell proper, but rather at San Agustin, New Mexico. The incident is still referred to as the Roswell crash simply because Roswell was the closest city of significance. In truth, it was not a separate accident at all, but another part of the same catastrophe, the passenger section of the first disc. The command cabin carrying the crew had crashed nearly 60 miles away. It was here that the bodies of several extraterrestrials were recovered, small, 4- and 5-fingered greys, whose names, according to some sources, were recorded as Raoul, Rikin, Kutu, and Sat. On that same date, July 1947, the Roswell Base Hospital made repeated calls to a local mortuary, asking how best to preserve unusual biological tissue. Large quantities of dry ice were purchased. Witnesses later connected these purchases with the storage of alien remains. In subsequent decades, photographs emerged purporting to show the bodies. Some skeptics insisted the figures were nothing more than images of a Chinese monk, pointing to what looked like a zipper on the garment. But proponents dismissed this claim as absurd. The anatomical features were simply not human, the eye slits were unnaturally large, the nose and mouth undersized, and most tellingly, the ears entirely absent. To reduce such anomalies to a shirt with a zipper was, in their view, ridiculous. Brazel himself changed his story by July 9th, offering a new account under pressure. Yet until his death he maintained that what he had originally seen was, without question, a disc-shaped craft. That same day, a series of hurried flights carried debris out of Roswell to Washington, D.C., Roswell to Fort Worth, Texas, and onward to Washington, Roswell to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Roswell to Los Alamos, New Mexico. Each flight contained fragments of the craft, though to the public the wreckage was explained away as nothing more than the remains of a weather balloon. But behind the scenes, something extraordinary was happening. Researchers claimed that the U.S. had discovered a way to generate bursts of energy capable of interfering with extraterrestrial propulsion systems, deliberately snatching UFOs out of the sky and causing them to crash. Once America realized this, the switch was thrown again and again. Crashes occurred not only in Roswell and Aztec, New Mexico, but also in Switzerland, Brazil, Norway, Poland, New Jersey, Bolivia, Arizona, Alabama, and beyond. One detail often overlooked is that not all the beings recovered were the familiar 3- or 4-fingered greys. At Socorro, New Mexico, in June 1947, a separate crash often conflated with Roswell, witnesses described extraterrestrials with 6 fingers. Autopsy films, leaked decades later, appeared to show six-fingered hands, a detail many dismissed until biblical texts were cited in support. In 2 Samuel 21:20, it is written, "Yet again there was war at Gath, where there was a man of great stature, with 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 4 and 20 in number." The ancient record seemed to confirm that such anomalies had existed long before the 20th century. Military cameramen like Jack Barrett later testified that they filmed the corpses retrieved from these crashes. Barrett recalled arriving at a fallen disc where he could hear the sobbing of wounded beings inside. The creatures clutched a black metallic box to their chests, screaming whenever soldiers approached. A general ordered one of the boxes seized. In the struggle, one of the beings was fatally injured. The box was never opened. Within weeks, Barrett was reassigned to film autopsies, not just one, but several, in July 1947, and again in 1949. Despite these accounts, confusion persisted. The Roswell crash and the Socorro crash were 2 separate incidents at 2 distinct sites, yet official reports deliberately blurred the details. Tabloids and leaked photographs added both evidence and disinformation. Some images were dismissed as hoaxes, while others withstood expert analysis. Even photo experts admitted, if the bodies were models, then they were the most convincing ever made. Meanwhile, the US government maintained its silence. Hangar 18, rumored to be at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, became synonymous with hidden alien technology and preserved bodies. In 1995, a series of photographs smuggled out by a retired Air Force technician seemed to confirm it. They showed autopsies, recovery crews, and the charred remains of extraterrestrials. The technician, now in his 80s, explained that he had kept the photos hidden for decades after watching colleagues die mysteriously when they tried to go public. Descriptions of the beings varied, but common elements emerged: humanoid forms about 5 feet tall, heads larger than human, fingers longer and more delicate, skin ash gray and wrinkled. Some wore yellow uniforms with black trim. Their technology was said to be 1,000 years ahead of ours. By the mid-1990s, even high-ranking insiders began to acknowledge the truth. Dr. Jesse Marcel Jr., son of Major Jesse Marcel, testified that he had personally handled the crash debris his father brought home in July 1947. In 1991, a government official named Richard D'Amato confirmed privately that extraterrestrials had indeed been recovered at Roswell, though their remains were no longer traceable. President Bill Clinton himself was reportedly briefed on the subject, raising the possibility of disclosure. Researchers like Robert Hastings later uncovered internal memos through the Freedom of Information Act. These documents made clear what officials denied in public: UFOs existed, they were of extraterrestrial origin, and they had a disturbing tendency to appear near nuclear facilities. The connection between atomic weapons and flying saucers stretched back to Alamogordo in 1945, when the first bomb was detonated. Thus the Roswell story, often dismissed as a single, isolated event, emerges instead as the cornerstone of a far larger pattern: multiple crashes, multiple species, deliberate cover-ups, and a government desperately trying to manage a reality that threatens to overturn everything humanity thought it knew.